The desert city baked under the heat of 2 suns. Its walls were made of cracked stone, its towers leaning like old bones, and the streets shimmered with waves of dust and heat. Everywhere in this city, water was life, and water was power. The fountains at the center were guarded like treasure chests, and only those judged pure by the council could touch the clear drops that spilled from silver spouts. She stood in the crowd, small and thin, her skin dry, her lips cracked, her eyes heavy. The girl was called Lyra by her late mother, but to the people of the city she was known only as Impure. When she walked, children whispered, women pulled their scarves tighter, and men spat on the ground. The council had declared her blood unclean because her mother had once loved someone from beyond their world. To them she was a shadow, something to despise. Yet thirst did not care for blood or laws. Her tongue was dry like sand, her throat burned like fire, and her knees shook as she made her way toward the fountain. The crowd parted not with kindness but with anger. Guards in bronze armor shifted their spears and glared at her as if she were carrying disease. Still, Lyra stepped closer, drawn by the sound of dripping water, the sweetest sound in all the world. She raised a trembling hand toward the fountain. But before her fingers could touch a single drop, the nearest guard slammed the butt of his spear against the stone. "Back, Impure," he barked, his voice sharp and cruel. The people murmured, some laughed, others shook their heads. Lyra's heart pounded. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked like broken glass. "Please," she whispered, "just one sip. I will die without it." Her words only fueled the crowd's cruelty. A woman in fine robes sneered, "Better for us if you do." "Curse should not drink from holy water," a man shouted. "Keep her away, she will poison the fountain." The guards grinned, enjoying the moment of power. Lyra's knees gave way, and she fell hard against the stone ground. The suns glared above, merciless, as if the sky itself wanted her gone. Dust clung to her face. Her breath came shallow, her vision blurred. But even as her strength drained away, her eyes locked on the shining drops of water falling, always out of reach. Around her the city moved without care. Merchants shouted about spices and cloth. Children ran with wooden toys. Priests sang praise to the suns. No one bent down. No one offered a hand. To them, she was less than nothing. But fate was moving, quietly, invisibly. At the edge of the market, a tall figure walked slowly. Watching with strange eyes, he wore simple clothes, heavy boots, and a travel pack, covered in the dust of many roads. His face was different, his skin not of the desert, his eyes bright with a fire unknown to this city. He was human, and he had come from far beyond the sands. The human stopped, his gaze caught by the sight of the girl on the ground. He saw her, lips cracked, her body trembling, the crowd jeering at her weakness. He did not know their language fully, but cruelty needed no translation. The people hissed warnings to him. "Leave her, stranger. She is impure." But his heart twisted, his jaw clenched. He felt anger rising like a storm. He watched as she reached again toward the fountain, her hand shaking, so close yet denied by iron law. The human felt something stir in him, something older than laws and older than fear. It was the simple truth that water is for the thirsty, and life is for all who live. And though he did not yet move, though his flask remained at his side, a choice was forming in his heart. A choice that would change the city, and perhaps the world. Lyra tried to push herself up, her body refusing. Her spirit nearly broken. Her eyes rolled back, her breath shallow, she collapsed again. The crowd laughed, cruel and cold, and the guards leaned on their spears with smiles of victory. But the human did not laugh. He did not smile. He took one slow step forward, then another, his shadow falling over the fallen girl. The people watched, confused, their whispers rising. Why would a stranger come near her? Why would anyone lower themselves to touch the impure? The human knelt beside her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. Her eyes fluttered open, weak, desperate. And for the first time that day, she saw kindness reflected in another's gaze. The sun still burned above. The fountain still sparkled with forbidden water, But something had shifted in the air. Something dangerous, something alive. The city held its breath as the human reached for the flask at his side. And in that moment, the future trembled, waiting to see if one small act of mercy could defy centuries of hate. The market was alive with noise, but all sound seemed to fade when the human knelt beside the girl. People drew back as if his touch alone would spread her impurity. Whispers rippled like snakes through the crowd. "Fool, he will be cursed," some muttered. "He defiles himself with the impure." Others hissed. But the human ignored them. His focus locked on the fragile life before him. His name was Daniel, though the people did not know it. He had traveled far across the sands, guided only by broken maps and the voice of his own curiosity. Unlike the desert folk, his skin was pale, touched by starlight rather than sun, and his eyes held the color of deep oceans, a color most here had never seen. They stared at him with suspicion, yet also with fear, because no one had expected a human to walk these streets alone. Daniel's hand brushed the flask at his belt. It was dented and old, a relic from his days in forgotten wars, but inside it carried water from his ship, clear and clean. He knew the value of that water. He knew every drop meant survival in the burning desert. But as he looked down at Lyra, her lips dry, her breaths shallow, he felt the choice pressing against his soul. The guards stepped forward, their bronze armor clinking. Stranger, one, barked, "Step away, this creature is forbidden, her kind may not drink." Daniel did not rise, he did not retreat. Instead, he looked up slowly, his eyes hard like steel. His voice came rough, shaped by many worlds, yet clear enough for them to understand. "She is dying," he said, "and you would watch her die while water stands not 3 feet away." The guard sneered. "Our law is older than your kind. The impure cannot touch the holy fountain." Daniel's jaw tightened. He had seen cruelty before, in other lands, in other wars. But here it burned sharper, because the cruelty was wrapped in false holiness. He touched the flask, unhooked it, and the crowd gasped as he brought it into the light. Lyra's weak eyes flickered toward it, her cracked lips parted, hope trembling like a fragile flame. The people shouted in horror. "No! He will give her his water! Stop him! Stop the human!" The guards raised their spears, but Daniel moved with calm defiance. He lifted the girl's head gently, poured a thin stream of water against her lips. At first she coughed, her throat too dry to accept it, but then she swallowed. And another swallow. Strength stirred in her limbs. Her breathing grew steadier and color returned faintly to her face. The market fell silent. No one had expected her to rise again. Whispers swirled, fear mixed with wonder. "She drinks and yet she lives," some said. "Where is the curse? Where is the doom?" Others muttered. The human ignored them all, his hand steady as he let her sip again, but mercy has a price. The captain of the guards raised his hand, and in a voice of thunder he cried, "Seize him!" The spears moved as one, and the crowd pressed closer, hungry to see punishment. Daniel set the flask away, then stood tall in front of Lyra. His frame was strong, not as broad as the desert warriors, but carrying the unshaken weight of a soldier. He had fought machines, beasts, and men. But never had he fought a law written in the hearts of a whole city. Lyra tugged at his sleeve weakly, her voice rasping. "Run, please, they will kill you." But Daniel shook his head, his voice low. "I will not leave you here, not to them." His eyes scanned the circle of guards, counting their number, studying their stance. He knew he could fight. He knew he might even win a few moments, but not against an entire city. Still, retreat was not his nature, not when someone's life depended on him. The crowd jeered, some cheering for the guards, others calling him mad. But beneath the noise, something else moved. Uncertainty, doubt. A child whispered to his mother, "Why does the stranger care for her?" An old man frowned. If she were cursed, would not his flesh rot where he touched her? Seeds of questions began to stir, small but dangerous. The guards lunged, but Lyra's hand pulled him suddenly. Toward a narrow alley, she stumbled, but adrenaline pushed her legs, and Daniel steadied her as they slipped into the maze of streets. Shouts rang behind them, armored boots pounding the ground. The chase had begun. Dust filled the air. Market. Stalls fell as guards crashed through. Daniel's heart pounded, yet his mind stayed sharp. He pulled her left, then right, dodging through twisted alleys, searching for a path out. But this was their city, their home, and they knew every street better than him. At last, with the sound of pursuit closing in, Lyra gasped. This way, I know a path, hidden from them. Her eyes burned with sudden resolve, weak but not broken. She guided him toward a half-buried stairwell at the edge of the market, hidden behind broken crates. The guards shouted in fury as they saw them vanish into the shadows below. Down into the earth they went, the light of the sun's fading, the smell of dust and stone filling their lungs. Daniel steadied her, his flask once more at her lips, and her strength grew bit by bit. For the first time since he entered the city, he felt a flicker of hope but also a greater danger. For he knew now this was no simple cruelty. This was a system built on hate, and in saving one life, he may have just lit a fire that would burn the whole city. The tunnels beneath the city were old and forgotten, stone walls pressed close on, either side damp with hidden moisture that never reached the people above. Daniel guided Lyra through the narrow passage, his torchlight flickering against carvings of ancient symbols. Every sound echoed, the drip of water, the shuffle of feet, the distant roar of guards above searching for them. Lyra leaned on his arm, weak but alive. Her breaths came shallow, but the water she had tasted already gave her a fragile strength. She looked at the human with wide eyes, eyes that carried both fear and wonder. No one has ever done this for me, she whispered, her voice trembling. Not once in all my life. Daniel only tightened his grip on her shoulder, his answer calm and steady. Then today is the first time. He reached again for the flask at his belt. It was scratched, dented, worn by years of travel, but inside it carried the clearest water he had. Daniel lifted it, unscrewed the cap, and let a stream fall gently against her lips. Lyra drank, her body shaking, her eyes closing as if each drop was a miracle. For her, it was more than water. It was dignity. It was life freely given. When she pulled away, her voice broke. Why risk yourself, stranger? They will kill you for helping me. Daniel studied. Her face, the lines of hardship carved far too deep for someone so young. His voice came low, filled with steel. Because no one deserves to die thirsty when water flows just beyond reach. To him, it was simple truth. But to her it sounded like rebellion. Her eyes widened with something new. Hope. Dangerous hope. Above them, muffled shouts echoed down. The guards were still searching. Daniel guided her deeper into the tunnels, every step careful, his senses sharp. He had walked battlefields, faced enemies in the void of space, but here the war was against ignorance, and for the first time, he wondered if one act of kindness could change a city built on hate. Lyra's mind swirled as she walked. She remembered the jeers, the stones thrown at her when she was a child, the way mothers pulled their children away from her shadow. She had believed their words, believed she was cursed. But the water in her veins now, the steady hand of the human holding her, made her question everything. Maybe I am not impure, she whispered to herself, as if afraid to believe it. Daniel heard her, his gaze steady. You never were, he said. His words were simple, but they struck her harder than any spear. Her throat tightened, her chest ached, and for a moment she nearly cried, but the tears would not come. The desert had stolen too many tears from her already. As they reached a wider chamber, Daniel lowered the torch and studied the walls. Symbols stretched across the stone, carvings of figures drinking together from one great vessel, men, women, and creatures of many forms, all shared water without division. Daniel traced the carvings with his hand. This city has forgotten what it once knew, he murmured. Lyra stared in awe, her voice shaking. These are the first days, the stories my mother told me, before the council banned them. Her heart beat faster, for here in the shadows she found proof that her people once believed differently, that water was not a privilege but a gift. that purity was not blood but unity. She turned to Daniel, her eyes burning with new fire. If they knew this truth, if they remembered. Daniel's jaw tightened. Truth is dangerous to those who build power on lies. Footsteps echoed suddenly from behind, sharper, closer. Daniel's head snapped around, his hand moving to the knife at his belt. Shadows flickered on the tunnel, walls, voices calling. This way. They cannot be far. The chase was not over. The guards had followed into the underworld. Lyra gasped, fear clawing at her throat. But Daniel stood firm, pushing her gently behind him. The flask glimmered in his hand as the torchlight caught it. Such a small thing, dented and plain, yet it carried the power to defy an empire. Daniel felt its weight, not just of water, but of choice. Every sip he gave her was rebellion. Every drop was a strike against the chains of law. And he knew the guards would not stop until that rebellion was crushed. The voices drew nearer, the clash of armor loud. Lyra tugged at his arm. We must run. There is another passage ahead. But Daniel shook his head, eyes fixed on the dark. No, he said, his tone calm and dangerous. They must see. Lyra frowned, confused. See what? Daniel lifted the flask, water shimmering inside. That this is not poison, that mercy is not a curse. The first guard appeared at the tunnel mouth, spear raised, eyes filled with fury. Behind him more followed, the chamber flooding with bronze and rage. Daniel uncapped the flask once more, holding it high so the water caught the light. Lyra froze, her heart racing, her fear clashing with awe. The human had no army, no weapon but truth. Yet he stood, against them all. The chamber trembled with tension, the guards stepping closer, their leader raising his hand. The crowd above would soon hear of this. The council would learn of the human who defied them. And as Daniel lowered the flask once, more to Lyra's lips, letting her drink openly in the presence of their hunters, he knew the first spark had been lit. The spark of something greater than rebellion. The spark of change. The chamber shook with the echo of armored boots. Bronze and steel clashed as the guards poured into the tunnel, their torches blazing like angry suns. Lyra pressed against the wall, fear tightening her chest, her breath ragged. Daniel stood before her, his body tense, the flask still in his hand, a defiance brighter than the torchlight. The captain's voice roared, deep and sharp. Stranger, you will surrender the girl and face judgment. His spear glinted as he pointed it forward, the others following, his lead. But Daniel did not move, his eyes steady, his voice even. Judgment for giving water to the thirsty. The words hung heavy in the chamber, echoing against stone. The guards shifted, uneasy, for even in their anger, the truth bit. At their hearts, Lyra whispered from behind him, her voice shaking. They will kill you, please, we must run. Daniel's jaw tightened. He glanced at her, then back at the advancing line of spears. Then we run, he said. And in the same breath, he pulled her by the hand, turning toward the shadows of a narrow passage. The guards shouted, charging forward, the tunnel exploding with sound. Dust rose in clouds as Daniel and Lyra sprinted down the passage. The tunnel twisted like a serpent, every corner threatening to lead them into a dead end. Torches flickered on the walls, the sound of pursuit growing louder. Daniel's breath came hard, his boots pounding against stone, but his grip on Lyra never faltered. Behind them, the guards shouted, their voices filled with hate and fear. Catch them, the impure must not escape, the human must die. The clang of armor echoed, the scrape of spears against stone sparked the air. Lyra stumbled, her strength still fragile, but Daniel pulled her up, his voice steady. Just a little farther, you can do this. The tunnel opened suddenly into a vast cavern. Columns of rock rose like giants, and pools of hidden water gleamed faintly in the dark. Lyra gasped, awe flickering in her eyes. This place, it is forbidden. No one is allowed here. Daniel's gaze swept the cavern, calculating, searching for a way forward. Then it is the perfect place to hide, he muttered. But the guards were not far, their torches spilling into the cavern, their shouts chasing the pair across the stone. Daniel guided Lyra behind one of the great columns, their backs pressed tight against cold rock. The air was heavy, filled with silence and the distant drip of water. For a moment, only the pounding of their hearts filled the void. Lyra clutched the flask, her fingers trembling. "Why do they hate me so much?" she whispered. Daniel leaned close, his voice low. "Because they fear what you are. Because they fear what truth you carry in your blood." Her eyes filled with confusion. "But I am only one girl." Daniel shook his head. "Sometimes one girl is enough to break a chain." The guards spread across the cavern, torches high, spears gleaming. Their leader barked orders, his voice bouncing off the stone walls. "Search every shadow, they will not escape." The flames moved closer, shadows stretching across the rock like claws. Daniel's mind raced. He had no weapon to match their numbers, no army to call upon, but he had his will and the instinct of a soldier who had survived 100 hopeless fights. Lyra tugged his arm, her voice sharp with urgency. "I know another way. A tunnel beyond the pools, it leads deeper, maybe even outside the city." Her eyes held both fear and determination, a fire lit by the water she had tasted. Daniel nodded once, trusting her. "Then guide me." Together they crept along the cavern's edge, every step measured, every breath controlled. But fate has sharp ears. A pebble slipped beneath Lyra's foot, the sound small, but in the cavern it cracked like thunder. One guard spun, his torch flaring, his voice a cry of triumph. "There, they are here." The cavern erupted in chaos, shouts rising, spears lifting. Daniel grabbed Lyra's hand, pulling her into a sprint. They dashed across the cavern, water splashing beneath their feet, torches chasing like burning eyes. Lyra pointed toward a dark arch at the far end, her voice breaking. "There, the tunnel. We must reach it." The guards closed in, their boots pounding, their cries filling the cavern like a storm. Daniel pushed harder, his lungs burning, his legs driving forward with the weight of survival. Spears flew, one striking the stone inches from his shoulder. Sparks exploding in the dark. Another skimmed past Lyra, tearing her sleeve but missing flesh. Daniel snarled, his grip tightening on her hand, pulling her faster. "Don't stop," he growled. "Not now." At last they reached the arch, the tunnel yawning open before them. But just as they crossed its threshold, the captain's voice thundered behind them. "You cannot run forever, human. The city will hunt you. The council will break you, and she will die as she was meant to." Daniel stopped for a heartbeat, turning his head, his eyes like fire. "Then let them come," he said, his voice low and unshaken, and with that he pulled Lyra into the darkness of the tunnel, the chase stretching deeper into the unknown. The cavern behind them roared with fury, the guards spilling forward, torches blazing, but ahead lay shadows, secrets, and paths. No council had walked in centuries. The sound of pursuit faded slowly as they pressed deeper. Yet both knew the chase was not over, it had only just begun. The tunnel stretched endlessly into the earth. Its ceiling dripped with ancient water, its walls carved with forgotten symbols. Daniel led with the torch high, Lyra close at his side, her steps weak but steadier than before. Behind them the sounds of the guards faded, swallowed by the stone, but the fear of pursuit clung to them like dust. For a time, neither spoke. Only the crackle of the torch and the drip of hidden streams filled the silence. Then Lyra's voice rose, soft but heavy. "You should not have saved me." Daniel turned his head, frowning. "Why?" Her eyes glistened in the torchlight, sorrow mixing with gratitude. "Because they will never stop hunting you now, and it is my curse that follows you." Daniel's step slowed, his gaze steady on her. "You are not cursed." But she shook her head, her hands trembling. "You do not understand. You are human. They call me impure because of what I am, because of what my blood carries." Her voice cracked, pain spilling. "From years of silence, my mother was of this city, but my father was from the stars." The words echoed in the tunnel. Daniel froze, surprise flickering across his face. He had guessed she was different, but not this. "A child of two worlds," he murmured, his voice more awe than shock. Lyra lowered her gaze, shame pressing her down. They call me unclean, a mistake, a warning to others, and so they deny me food, deny me water, deny me even the right to live among them." Her voice trembled but grew stronger as she spoke. "When I was small, my mother told me stories of my father. She said he was kind, that he came from beyond the sands. But the council called it a crime. They said her love was a sickness, and when she died, they turned their hate on me." She swallowed hard, tears she could not shed burning behind her eyes. "Every day I believed them. Every day I thought I was wrong for even breathing." Daniel's jaw tightened, the torchlight casting shadows across his face. He had seen cruelty in many forms, but this was something colder, deeper. The cruelty of a lie told for generations. He stepped closer, his voice steady. "Lyra, listen to me. Your blood is not shame. It is strength. Your very existence is proof that worlds can join, that love can cross stars." She blinked, her chest aching, as if his words had struck something locked away for years. They reached a vast chamber where water pooled in the stone, glowing faintly with minerals. The air was cool, heavy with silence. Lyra touched the surface with trembling fingers, her reflection broken by ripples. "I dreamed of this," she whispered. "A place where water is free, where no guard watches, where no one calls me cursed." Daniel knelt beside her, filling the flask, handing it to her once more. "Dreams are seeds," he said, "but they can grow into something real if someone dares to plant them." She drank, her strength returning with every swallow. The water glistened on her lips, and for the first time in her memory, she did not feel ashamed. She looked at Daniel, a flicker of courage burning in her eyes. "Do you think it is possible to change them, to make them see?" Daniel studied her face, the face of a child hated for no reason, the face of hope that refused to die. "Yes," he said at last, his voice like stone. "But not without cost. Truth is always paid for in struggle." Lyra lowered her head, her thoughts heavy. "If they knew who my father was, they would never forgive me. They would rather bury the truth forever." Daniel's brow furrowed. "Then we must make the truth too loud to bury." She looked at him, startled. "But how?" He held up the flask, water shimmering inside. "With this, with every drop that proves their lies false, with every act of defiance that shows life cannot be chained." The torchlight flickered, shadows dancing across the walls. Suddenly, Lyra's voice dropped, almost a whisper. "There is more." Daniel leaned closer, his expression sharp. "Tell me." Her hands clenched, her chest rising with fear. "I know where my father came from. I know where his ship lies, buried in the sands beyond the city, hidden so the council would never find it." Daniel's heart beat faster, the air thick with revelation. A buried ship, a link to the stars, a proof that could shatter the council's lies. "If we find it," he said slowly, "the truth will no longer be a whisper. It will be a storm." Lyra nodded, her fear mixed with resolve. "But to reach it, we must survive the city, and they will not stop until we are ashes." At that moment, distant echoes stirred in the tunnel behind them, the sound of armored boots, the cry of hunters, who would not rest. Daniel's grip on the flask tightened, his eyes burning. "Then let them come," he said, his voice low. "We will carry the truth through fire if we must." Lyra's heart pounded, fear and hope clashing in her chest. For the first time, she felt the weight of her blood not as a curse but as destiny. The human had shared his water, but more than that, he had shared his courage. And in the dark of the hidden chamber, with the guards drawing closer, the spark of rebellion burned. Brighter, the Impure was no longer alone. The tunnel grew wider as Daniel and Lyra pressed forward. The air was heavy with dampness, the smell of old stone clinging to their skin. Lyra's words still echoed, about her father, about the buried ship hidden beyond the city sands. The weight of that truth was sharp, powerful, like a blade waiting to cut through lies, but truth was fragile, and so were those who carried it. As they walked, Lyra slowed, her eyes flickering nervously toward the shadows. Daniel noticed, his voice low. What is it? She hesitated, her throat tight. There is someone ahead. I know these paths. No one should be here. From the darkness, a figure emerged. He was thin, wrapped in ragged robes, his face sharp with hunger and fear. Lyra gasped. Taryn. The name trembled on her lips, for Taryn had once been her only friend, a boy who had shared stolen fruit with her when they were small. Now his eyes darted between her and Daniel, wide and restless. You should not be here, Lyra, he whispered. They are searching everywhere for you. Daniel stepped forward, his hand on the hilt of his knife. Who is he? Lyra's voice wavered. He is someone I trusted. But the way Taryn's gaze lingered on the flask, the way his hands twitched with nervous greed, told Daniel more than words could. Taryn, Lyra said softly. Please, you must help us. The guards are close. We need safe passage. The boy's lips trembled, his eyes dark with guilt. I cannot, he whispered. They promised me water, food, a place in the city if I showed them where you hide. The words cut deeper than any blade. Lyra staggered, pain flashing across her face. You betrayed me. Taryn's shoulders hunched, his voice desperate. I had no choice, Lyra. I was starving. No one helps the poor unless they serve the council. You know this. Daniel's eyes narrowed, his voice a growl. So you would sell her life for scraps. From the tunnel behind, the echo of armored boots grew louder. The guards were close, their shouts carrying the promise of violence. Taryn's eyes flickered, torn between fear of the council and the guilt burning in Lyra's stare. I am sorry, he muttered, stepping back into the shadows. Leaving the betrayal heavy in the air, Daniel pulled Lyra gently forward, his voice firm. We cannot waste time on him, come. But her chest ached, her throat tight, for the only friend she had once trusted had chosen survival over loyalty. Her legs moved, but her spirit trembled until Daniel's voice steadied her. Remember this, he said. Betrayal shows how deep their chains are, but we will not wear them. The guards burst into view at the far end of the tunnel, torches blazing, spears raised. Their captain's voice roared, End this chase, kill the human, bring the girl alive for judgment. The chamber they had entered was wide and circular. No easy escape. Lyra froze, panic clawing at her chest, but Daniel stepped forward, his frame a shield. He unhooked the flask once more, holding it high where all could see. The water shimmered in the firelight, pure and alive. The guards sneered, shouting curses. Blasphemy, he feeds the cursed with holy water. But Daniel's voice cut through their noise, strong and clear. This water is not holy because of your laws, it is holy because it gives life, and life belongs to all. The words rang against the stone. Some guards hesitated, their eyes flickering with doubt, but the captain snarled, Do not listen, he spreads poison, strike them down. The soldiers advanced, spears gleaming, the clash of boots filling the chamber. Daniel stepped in front of Lyra, his stance wide, his gaze unshaken. He uncapped the flask, and without fear held it to Lyra's lips, letting her drink openly before their eyes. Gasps tore through the ranks. The impure drinking water, the human feeding her, and yet no curse, no death, no plague fell upon them. Instead, life bloomed in her cheeks. Her strength steadied, her eyes burned brighter than the torches. The guards faltered, uncertainty spreading like cracks through their resolve. The captain roared in fury. Blind yourselves to his tricks, kill them! The first guard lunged, his spear thrusting forward. Daniel moved faster than expected, deflecting the blow with the metal flask itself, the clang echoing sharp and loud. He shoved the man aside, his soldier's strength spilling into every motion. Another guard rushed, and Daniel struck him down with a punch that cracked like stone. But more came. Their numbers overwhelming, Lyra cried out, fear and courage clashing in her chest. She grabbed a loose stone, hurling it at a guard, her voice rising. He is right. Your laws are lies. Water is for all. Her cry echoed through the chamber, and for the first time some of the soldiers froze. Their spears wavered, their eyes filled not with hate but with doubt. The captain saw it, rage burning in his gaze. He raised his weapon high, ready to strike Daniel down, but Daniel stood his ground, his body a wall between the captain and Lyra. If you kill me, he said, his voice calm but fierce. My blood will cry the truth louder than your laws. The chamber quaked with silence, the soldiers torn between fear of their leader and the truth they had just seen. Lyra's chest heaved, her heart racing, but for the first time she felt the weight of destiny settle on her shoulders. This was no longer about survival, no longer about thirst. It was about a truth too powerful to bury, and as the captain stepped forward, fury burning in his eyes, the stage was set for a stand that would echo across the city. The chamber trembled with silence. Torches flickered, shadows stretched, and every eye was fixed on the human standing, firm. Daniel held the flask in one hand, his body between Lyra and the captain's raised spear. The captain's voice was a storm of rage. You dare defy the council. You dare share holy water with the impure. Daniel's voice was calm, steady, unshaken. Water belongs to the thirsty. Life belongs to the living. No law can change that. His words struck the chamber like thunder, echoing in the minds of every soldier. Some shifted uncomfortably, their spears trembling, their eyes flicking toward Lyra. She stood tall behind Daniel, her shoulders squared, her fear slowly turning into fire. The captain lunged, his spear thrusting toward Daniel's chest in one swift motion. Daniel twisted aside, the spear scraping stone. He shoved the flask high into the air, letting water spill, droplets falling, like diamonds under torchlight. The soldiers gasped, some reaching out instinctively, their throats dry, their lips cracked. And in that moment, the truth became clearer than any law. Lyra stepped forward, her voice carrying, louder than she thought, possible. You see it, the water does not curse me, it does not poison me, it gives me life as it gives you life. Her voice trembled, but it carried across the chamber, bouncing from wall to wall. For years you called me impure. For years you let me suffer, but it was never truth. It was only fear. The guards froze, their hearts battling between loyalty and reason. A few lowered their spears, uncertain, their eyes burning with shame. One young soldier whispered, "She drinks, and yet lives," another muttered. "Maybe we have been lied to," the captain roared, his face twisted with fury. "Do not listen. The council is truth, she is a stain. The human is a corrupter." He raised his weapon again, ready to strike Daniel down once more. But Daniel caught the spear with his bare hand, steel biting into his palm, blood dripping. His voice cut through the chamber, sharp as a blade. Your council fears her because she proves they are wrong. They fear truth more than death. The soldiers wavered, their captain snarling, his power slipping through his fingers. Then, from the crowd of armored men, one broke rank. A mother's voice, cracked with pain, rose from behind the line. "I lost a child because the council forbade her water. I believed their lies, but no more." She threw down her spear, the sound ringing like a bell. Silence followed. Then another soldier let his weapon fall, then another. Spears clattered to the stone, echoing like the start of an earthquake. The captain's eyes widened in fury, his voice breaking. "Traitors, you shame the city." But the tide had shifted. The doubt had become too strong. Lyra stepped forward, her chest heaving, her voice burning like flame. "All my life you called me impure, but I tell you now I am not curse, I am proof." She spread her arms wide, the torchlight glinting in her eyes. "My blood carries two worlds, and still I live, still I breathe, still I drink water as you do. What curse is that?" Her words struck like arrows. The soldiers bowed their heads, the weight of truth too heavy to deny. Even those who clung to fear could not stop their hands from trembling. The captain, desperate, lunged again, rage twisting his face. But Daniel moved like lightning, striking him down, the spear clattering from his hand. The chamber erupted in gasps. The captain groaned on the ground, his power broken, his voice weak. "The council will never forgive this, they will burn you all." But no one stepped forward to raise him. No soldier lifted him up. Instead, they turned their eyes to Lyra, their silence filled not with hate, but with shame and awe. Daniel helped her step into the center of the chamber. He lifted the flask high, water gleaming in the firelight. "Water for all," he said, his voice carrying across the stone. And for the first time, the words were not met with anger, but with a ripple of agreement. Water for all, voices whispered, then grew louder. Water for all, Lyra's heart pounded. Tears she had long thought lost burned her eyes. She stood tall, no longer a shadow, no longer impure. The people had seen, the soldiers had witnessed, and though the council still ruled above, something greater had begun. A change, small as a spark, yet enough to light a fire across the desert. Daniel placed the flask in her hands, his voice soft. "It is yours now, Lyra. Carry it, and carry the truth." She gripped it tight, the metal cool against her skin. The girl who had been denied water now held the power to change her world, and in her heart, she knew this was only the beginning. Far above, the city still glimmered in the sun, blind to the rebellion stirring beneath its feet. But in the depths of the earth, hope had been born. The impure was impure no more, and the human who shared his water had given them all something greater than survival. He had given them the courage to stand, and the desert would never be the same again.